I long to open up my heart, for my heart do my part. My story was yesterday's news. From rivals cannot keep apart. On this holy night, stay with me till the morning. Do not depart. On a night so dark as this, my course, how can I chart? O breath of life, help me tonight, that in the morn I make a start. In my love for you, I will myself and ego thwart. Like Hafiz, being love smart, I long to master that art. Who better to write a love poem than Hafiz himself? Considered to be one of the greatest Persian poets of all time, Hafiz just had a natural way with words that not only sounded beautiful to the ear, but also revealed deep spiritual and mystical insights. In fact, if I'm to be honest, that's probably why I haven't spent too much time reading or featuring his poems on this channel, because unlike Rumi, Attar, or Sadi, Hafiz was just on a completely different level. His poetry can sometimes be so incredibly deep and complex that it leaves a lot of room for confusion and interpretation among different readers. But fortunately for us, some of his poems are a little bit easier to understand and appreciate than others, and I think this poem in particular represents that perfect balance between simplicity and spiritual depth. In this poem, we discover much of the same themes that are common in a lot of Hafiz's love poetry, including the joys and pains of love, the longing for union with the beloved, and the beauty of having a spiritual connection. So let's jump right in and see if we can discover the wisdom of this beautiful poem. But first, if you are enjoying this video so far, please drop a like and consider becoming a subscriber to the channel. I really do appreciate the support and would love to have all of you with me here on this journey as we continue to explore the wisdom of spiritual poetry, and more importantly, how it can apply to our daily lives. Now, as is the case with a lot of Hafiz's love poems, there is always a strong element of a yearning for God. You can just feel it right off the bat when he says, I long to open my heart. This is clearly a sign of Hafiz's devotion to God, and also a reflection of where exactly he is on his spiritual journey. Because, like many of the famous Persian poets before him, Hafiz was more than just a poet. He was also a scholar of Islamic law and philosophy. In fact, as a child, he memorized the entire Quran, earning him the coveted title of Hafiz, which means guardian or protector, since someone who memorizes the Quran is often considered to be guarding or protecting the Holy Scripture. As an adult, Hafiz went on to study under some of the leading scholars of his time and was known for being extremely knowledgeable, well-spoken, and intelligent. But of course, these are all just attributes to describe how smart Hafiz was. They don't necessarily describe how incredibly wise he was. Because to be smart requires the mind, but to be wise, you must tap into the soul. And that is why I want to focus specifically on Hafiz's opening line here. He isn't saying that he wants to gain more knowledge. Rather, he is saying that he wants to open his heart. He wants to discover his own soul and develop a true and meaningful relationship with God. In many spiritual traditions, including Sufism, which greatly influenced Hafiz, there is a clear distinction between the mind and heart as being two separate centers of consciousness and perception. The mind, as we know it, is often associated with our thinking, logic, and reason, and is often considered to represent our ego, or the sense of self that is constructed by our thoughts and beliefs. On the other hand, the heart represents our intuition, feeling, and wisdom. It is considered to be the seat of all our spiritual awareness, wisdom, and insight. And in Sufism, the heart is actually seen as the place where the divine spark or spirit resides. And the goal of all spiritual practice is to awaken or purify the heart so that it can actually connect with God. This opening line is much more than just a declaration of Hafiz's spiritual devotion. If we read it carefully, it is actually an incredibly deep teaching that shows us how we can actually get closer to God, how we can transcend the limitations of our mind and ego in order to connect with the divine reality that underlies all things. Because for our heart, we should do our part. In other words, it's not enough to just want to open up the heart, as Hafiz is saying here. We also have to follow through with it. We have a responsibility to honor our heart and to do our part to live in full alignment with our true self. You see, there is an authenticity and willingness here that separates Hafiz's love from God from someone who merely wants to connect with God, but doesn't actually go out of their way to strive toward Him. You have to have this yearning, which, quite frankly, not many people are willing to cultivate, but which is absolutely essential if you truly wish to connect with God. For as Hafiz beautifully says, my story was yesterday's news. That is, our story, or our ego-based sense of self, is just a thing of the past. We create all these stories about who we are, what we like, what we want. But in truth, these are all just thoughts and ideas, not the essence of who we truly are. We have to let go of these stories, these news of yesterday, in order to discover who we truly are, in order to truly connect with God on a deep and intimate level. And I'm not exactly sure what the next line means, but something about the word rivals just conjures up this feeling of competition, or conflicting thoughts that are pulling us in different directions. These thoughts are nothing like the calm, stable, and peaceful presence of God. There's just something about connecting deeply with God that simply can't be explained. but that wants us to move closer and closer toward Him. Which is why Hafiz is imploring God to stay with him on this night and to not leave until the morning. Now, we can of course read this literally and think of a holy night that is physically very dark. But as you probably have already discovered by now, especially if you're a regular follower of this channel, there is a really deep spiritual meaning here. The dark night symbolizes a dark and difficult chapter in Hafiz's life. It's a period marked by intense suffering and struggle, which candidly we all find ourselves in from time to time. Most of us feel incredibly lonely, sad, and empty during this difficult period, and there is seemingly nothing that can get us out of this rut. But as Hafiz's spiritual mentor and guide Rumi beautifully says, the cure is in the wound. In other words, it is precisely in these darkest moments of our life that the light of God actually appears. It is in these challenging moments, when we feel like we've hit rock bottom, that we all of a sudden have this potential and desire to awaken. And this is exactly what Hafiz is referring to when he calls this dark night a holy night. Because it is a night of awakening, a night of joining the beloved and becoming lost in his embrace. For without God, there would not be a night. There would not be a day. There wouldn't even be ourselves. God is literally the breath of life that guides us through the darkness of our night and into the light of morning. In the Hebrew Bible, we learn that God created Adam from dust and then breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, giving him life and consciousness. Similarly, in the Quran, we also hear this creation story and understand the importance of this divine spark. Even in Christian theology, the doctrine of the Holy Spirit is often depicted as the breath of God that animates and sustains our soul. So, Hafiz is not only just being poetic here, he's also masterfully fusing together so many different faiths and beliefs with this universal concept that God has made all life possible. He has made all of us possible. And if we remember this, then why shouldn't we do everything we can to move closer to God? Why shouldn't we open up our heart and do everything in our power to return back to Him? He has given us everything and still keeps on giving, even when we forget and abandon Him. Even when we are so lost and confused in the most darkest nights of our life. And that's because God is different from all of us. You know, we often give up when we give everything to someone, but receive nothing back in return. But God just keeps on giving and giving without any expectation of getting something back in return. This is true love. This is the love that we should all be aspiring toward in our day-to-day and spiritual practice. God's light is always available to us, no matter how dark our life may seem. His messages are always broadcasting in our life, but we just have to tune in to the right frequencies to hear them. We have to open up our heart and follow its path to return back to God. And so Hafiz is not asking anyone to help him through this challenging period, except of course for God. Because only God can guide us from suffering to peace. Only God can guide us from ignorance to awakening. And at the heart of this journey back to God is this incredible love that we have and develop for Him. This love will help us thwart and transcend our ego and self. The same ego that has made us forget God in the first place. The ego that craves the confusion of duality, that craves the chaos of thoughts. But not anymore, Hafiz says. He has become love smart and is now dedicating his entire life to mastering this art of opening up the heart and becoming one with God. In fact, just by referencing his own name in the final lines of the poem, Hafiz is expressing his own humility, vulnerability, and admitting that he does not know everything. Hafiz actually references himself a lot in each of his poems, and he's not the only one. Many Persian poets, including Rumi and Sa'di, frequently refer to themselves not as a means to glorify themselves, but rather to develop a personal and deep connection with the reader and to invite them on their own journey of self-discovery and awakening. But regardless of how you read and interpret this poem, I really hope that it helps spark a yearning for God inside you. You know, that is the ultimate message here, the ultimate takeaway that I can give you. And so with that, I thank you for watching this video and joining me on this incredibly rich journey of opening up the heart and ultimately reconnecting with God. If you enjoyed this video, then I have a really good feeling that you will enjoy and benefit from some of the other videos that are on this channel. And so I highly recommend subscribing to stay up to date on all the latest videos that come out every single week. Ultimately, mastering the art of loving God is a lifelong practice that never ends, even for wise souls like Hafiz. But day by day, you'll begin to experience a greater sense of love, peace, and compassion while developing a deeper connection with God. It is this love that will carry you past your negative thoughts and emotions, and that will lift you above everything, lift you above your struggles and suffering until you finally transcend everything, even your own self, to become once more a part of God. But until then, keep journeying, be patient, and let your heart be your guide on each and every step of the path. Because before you know it, you will not only enjoy the words of this beautiful poem, you will actually experience them.